Welcome in back to the Star Wars Newsnet channel. If you are listening, happy holidays to you. The plan right now is this comes out on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, just some sort of fun holiday gift from the Star Wars Newsnet team. We're going to be reviewing a year in Star Wars, and oh, what a year it has been. And just going through all of the things that were announced, not announced, de-announced, changes to the announcement, plus the actual things we got. It was quite a lot, but we are going to go through it all. We'll talk about the highs, the lows of the year in Star Wars, where we're at going into 2025. It's going to be a fun time. Welcome in. My name is Tyler, as always, and I'm joined on this midweek podcast with my good friend Miguel, who has dinner reservations in an hour. So we got to get out of here quickly and thoroughly. And I probably better be on the road as well, too, or I'm going to be in trouble. So we have things to do, things to talk about. Miguel, let's waste no time. Are you ready to get into the madness of Star Wars 2024?
You know what's nice? It's nice not to be talking to you at like 4 a.m. in the morning.
This is the beauty of winter break for school, where I have a schedule that allows me to do these midday pods my time and at a decent time for you instead of vice versa. It is nice. It is much nicer for you, I'm sure. It's very different doing like 10 o'clock or something and having to go to bed after that versus staying up till 1 a.m. or something like you have to do. Though I appreciate it as
it's
always.
nice. It's nice.
So what you're gonna say is you're gonna be yelling, screaming, jumping up and down because you're gonna have so much more energy than normal for this.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Well, the viewer will have to judge after we wrap.
Okay, so I'm going to run through everything that happened in the Disney Plus universe this year. I'm gonna put them on the screen as I go, and hopefully I don't miss out on anything. But real quick before I go, hit that like and subscribe button for all of your Star Wars Newsnet stuff. We bring you new pods all the time. Every Thursday night for the live show. Usually try to give you a midweek, early week pod. Every Saturday, Luke and I do our timeline show through the Star Wars canon timeline. Follow Star Wars Newsnet everywhere you are on social media. Here we go. Let's go. Earlier this year, we had Ahsoka Season 2 that was announced that it's going to be in production soon. We know filming is going to start in 2025. Andor Season 2 wrapped up everything this year. Comes out, obviously, April 25, but it wrapped up everything this year. We got some information. We got some casting announcements. We're going to talk about that for Season 2. New images have already been revealed. We have a little sizzle reel, 9 seconds, like sizzle teaser thing that was released in a Disney Plus look at 2025, which is exciting. Visions Season 3 confirmed, and as the anime fan that I am, I can say I'm super excited for this because my only anime experience is Star Wars Visions. So I am excited to keep growing in my anime love. I still haven't seen War of the Rohirrim yet, Miguel. I need to go.
You don't really need
do
to.
that. Okay, I really don't. We saw the conclusion of our favorite group of clone troopers. Bad Batch Season 3 ended this year, and we're going to talk about that because we still have no new animation news for what's next in Star Wars animation, which is kind of remarkable at this point. But the Bad Batch ended, and it was actually the fun announcement over the weekend that there's going to be a Bad Batch novel that comes out next year, which I don't really know much about. I haven't looked into it because I was super busy this last weekend, obviously, and so I'm excited to see what that has. But we ended an entire Star Wars animated series. Tales of the Jedi never happened this year, but in its place, we got Tales of the Empire, and it came and went, and that's kind of a good way of summing it up. A nice little surprise gift, though, nonetheless, on Star Wars Day. And then, of course, we had The Acolyte that came out over the summer, and everyone had a perfectly normal, rational response to its release and entire series. because it got canceled, there will be no Acolyte season 2. We'll talk about the ramifications a little bit of the Acolyte and just looking back on what an interesting time that was this year. And then, of course, as always, we get a little Star Wars humor in the Lego world with Rebuild the Galaxy happening this year. And honestly, I was pleasantly surprised with just the amount of fun I had with the four or three little, episodes that came with Rebuild the Galaxy. But again, like all Lego Star Wars, it comes and goes. It's just a nice little brain break, if you know what I mean. We had Young Jedi Adventures Season 2, which I think came before Rebuild the Galaxy, but, oh well. That's obviously Luke and I will be getting into Young Jedi Adventure Season 2 on the Timeline show. If you're curious about how we feel about the first two episodes, you can check out episode 37, which came out last Saturday. And we have right now the last thing on the docket, Skeleton Crew, which is about halfway. Well, it is halfway over at this point. Whenever this podcast gets released, it'll either still be halfway or episode 5 will have just come out. Hours after, hours before. I'm not sure. We're planning on when we're going to drop this. We'll see. But Skeleton Crew, right in the heart of that season. And, it's a mixed bag in terms of how people feel about it right now. I have no idea what the viewership of this is right now. I'm assuming not great since they haven't promoted anything right yet, because I feel like when it's going well, they try to drop some sort of news about everything being watched. But Miguel, when you really sit back and think about it, it was a pretty massive year on Disney Plus for Star Wars. When you think about multiple live action shows coming out, we had the end of an animated series, we had different shorts, we have news for upcoming Disney Plus shows. However, I think the general consensus for a lot of fans is it felt a little bit, once Bad Batch ended, it kind of felt like a big nothing burger for Star Wars the second half of the year, which is not exactly where you want to be. What are your just overall impressions on how you feel this year of Disney Plus Star Wars, came and went? How did it make you feel, as we end the year this year?
So I'm not feeling great at the moment. I'm gonna start with your last point there with Skeleton Crew, because I know you haven't read it yet, but this is precisely the main argument that I made on the supposed Sunday piece that was published on Monday morning. Is that who is watching Skeleton Crew? Because yes, you are completely right. Whenever there's as of late, whenever there's a new Disney Plus series, the service basically yells into the world, these many people watch our first episode. We had 40 million views with Ahsoka. We had 12 million views with Acolyte. We had 10 million views with Loki. There was no announcement on Skeleton Crew, and yeah, that's not great news, especially because considering the third-party data that we have so far, which isn't always reliable, but comes sometimes can give us a hint of where things are going. Skeleton Crew isn't even charting red yet for the first 3 weeks. So yeah, my main concern right now is what is the impact of Star Wars on the culture, meaning Skeleton Crew. I think, you said that there's a mixed response. I think the response has been mostly positive. I know I haven't really reacted very well to it, but I think I'm in the vast minority. And I think most of the people that who have watched the series have actually enjoyed it and fun. I know I had informal conversations with people the other day saying, how much they're enjoying it and how much they enjoy Neil and how much they actually like the Goonies vibe.
Let me ask you a question then.
Yeah.
Because I think it goes into the viewership too. I think the model right now you see this outside of Netflix essentially is, we're going to release these one episode at a time, and we're going to, to keep that, that subscriber base going for a longer period of time. And Star Wars has done that with pretty much every live action project. They've done, maybe 2 episodes or 3 episode premieres, and then, 1 week since. Outside of like a Tales of the Empire, Tales of the Jedi, we see that 1 week model, and we see that across most other streaming platforms other than Netflix, who does the binge model. But even they have done, like with the last Stranger Things season, which is one of their bigger, shows they've had a couple years ago, they said we're going to do part 1 and part 2. And I'm wondering if Star Wars should look at, because I've long been, hey, I love these 1 week episodes, but I wonder with a show like Skeleton Crew, which is built entirely around getting the family around the TV over the holiday season. I wonder if it could have benefited from like a part one, part two, where they dropped the first half of it, in the weeks leading up to Christmas, like a week before, Christmas or the holidays, a week or 2 weeks, and then you drop the second half right around the into the holiday season. So that way you have families get around. We're gonna watch for a couple hours, like we're gonna watch a movie, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna finish this. I wonder when you're gearing around families and you think about the just crazy schedules that families have around this time of year, where you can get everyone on board to sit and watch something, 30, 40 minutes every week. I feel like that might be harder versus if you said, all right, we're going to get around, we're going to watch like the Star Wars holiday family thing for 2 hours. I feel like that might have been an easier model to go by. I know they like to do these week by week, but to me, this would have felt like the perfect opportunity to try something different, even and say, we're going to release the first four here and then the last four, after, beginning of the new year or like the week after Christmas, something like that. Have you thought about that at all? Has that entered your brain? What do you think about that idea? Because I've always been the 1 week model, but Skeleton Crew feels like maybe a little different to me.
I, I would disagree.
Okay.
First of all, because the main goal of the strategy that you're saying has already been accomplished, because by the time Christmas Day happens, the first 5 episodes will be available already. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
for the purposes of having something to watch on Christmas Day, it's pretty much as if they had dropped the first 4 episodes
Right.
at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I would say that I think this was the perfect time to drop it because of your precisely because of your argument, because
Mm-hmm.
you've had some weeks now to build up some
Mm-hmm.
momentum. They probably knew that not many people were gonna watch this from the beginning because, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, they didn't like fully promote it. Like they were promoting the Acolyte for like the last month and a half, like every day with
Mm-hmm.
new stuff, and they were dropping posters. They had tons of reels and short spots on TikTok and on YouTube and like pretty much everywhere. Now, like with Skeleton Crew, they were promoting Andor instead of Skeleton Crew a couple of weeks before the show came out.
Right.
Uh, and second of all, like even the appeal of the show is much more limited than something like The Acolyte,
Mm-hmm.
because it's precisely targeting families and younger generations rather than something
Mm-hmm.
for everyone like The Acolyte was supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
But now you've had some weeks to build some momentum, and the couple of people who have watched the series can tell their friends, oh, this is actually more
This is
fun
actually
than
fun.
The Acolyte
This is
was. Yeah.
actually good.
And
You
now
can
that
get into
you're
it.
getting the family together for Christmas, you're like, what should we watch? Oh, I've heard great things about this. And I made this point on the piece that I mentioned, and I bet that the viewership for Skeleton Crew this week is gonna be a huge increase with respect. It's
Mm-hmm.
gonna see a huge increase with respect to last week or the week before,
Mm-hmm.
precisely because of this appeal that they now have 5 episodes to watch, and if people haven't really caught up until this point, they can now
They have that
have the chance
opportunity
to,
to do it.
and they have another episode out on New Year's Eve that maybe they can watch on the New Year's, and then they have just two more to go after that. As you were saying, though, like as you were speaking, I was thinking, could it have been a better strategy to drop 2 episodes this week and 2 episodes the next week to wrap it up, so you get like this final push from the families, from like family viewing, instead of having the
Before everything starts
last
back up
two,
again.
yeah, before instead of having the last 2 episodes after Christmas when people are back to work, back to their
Mhm.
routines, and
Back to
perhaps they
work, kids
drop.
go back to school, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, that
Yeah,
makes sense.
I mean that's
Mhm.
like an alternate scenario that maybe could have worked, but I think that for the cards that they were given, this was a pretty good strategy for the release.
Mhm. Okay. Do you think, and then last thing on Skeleton Crew, do you think it's been the palate cleanser at least that maybe Star Wars needed going into the new year, where even if not, maybe it doesn't get the viewership that they're hoping, but just the overall vibes, even online or from people, word of mouth, might just be a little bit less vitriol going into the new year that maybe they're like, you know what? Maybe even if we didn't get the numbers and return on investment that we wanted here, maybe it will pay dividends in the long run because there might be just a little bit more positivity, or at least a more of a blank slate with the fandom moving forward.
I don't think so. As I was saying, I'm mostly concerned right now about the very low impact that anything Star Wars is having right now. Especially, the Acolyte had a big impact in terms of discourse, but did anyone really watch it? Because the charts weren't showing that, and that's precisely because they didn't renew it. Sorry, precisely because of that they didn't renew it.
Right.
And yeah, Ahsoka did have some viewership, but I don't think it was nearly as high as they were hoping. Possibly it was in the range of what they were expecting, but this isn't like anything outside of Mandalorian, and Obi-Wan hasn't really had any cultural impact for Star
Right.
Wars. Whereas movies like Rise of Skywalker, even though they had a huge discourse online and very negative at times, they did actually leave a mark, and people actually talked about them. And now it's like four random people on Twitter talking about the same thing every day. It's like, um, I forgot what your question was, but yeah, I'm mostly concerned about this over like, oh, the palate cleanser thing. Yeah, I think that for the like 4 to 5 people who are loyally watching everything Star Wars, this acts this does act as a palate cleanser. Uh, and so will Andor next year. So these 4 or 5 people will watch Andor, and they will also forget about the negativity surrounding, uh, Star Wars, because I think that show will be quite good.
What is
And
the high for Star Wars Disney Plus this year then? What would the high be? If if you're if you're a Star Wars fan, or if you're in, sitting in Lucasfilm, you're looking through the Disney Plus slate of the year and you're going, where's our win? Where's our win coming from? Like our number one, we're gonna rest, at least I can go into 2025 going, we accomplished this, or this happened, and I'm feeling good about it going forward.
so I'm gonna say something crazy that a year ago I would have, not been on this boat, but I think it
Okay.
was Bad Batch.
Okay.
Because I think that that series was a huge accomplishment for in terms of like narratively, it was much more compelling than previous seasons for me. It was people who watched it, I think, really enjoyed it. I think you have a loyal viewership there that didn't really complain about it, and they were like pretty satisfied with how it ended. And I think they also picked up some people along the way, and I think that that generated some goodwill for Star Wars animation overall. And I think that people are craving a new series now that may or may not come out next year. I'm not sure. But if it's not next year, maybe the year after. And I think that because of how Bad Batch ended, and because of how, Visions is always also gonna like perform not nearly as well as Bad Batch did, but it's gonna get some views, and I think that was a pretty good run for them.
When I think back of Bad Batch, like my main conclusions from that were, one, I absolutely adored the way that they wrapped everything up, and the way they concluded it was wonderful. But the thing I loved most, what that I miss in Star Wars too, because The Mandalorian has an overarching like story that it does, but there are times where it feels more like this is kind of the mission of the week, or just the
Yeah.
quest of the week. And that's honestly what I love most about my Star Wars TV. I just love having like a Star Wars, this is the mission of the week, and that's what Bad Batch routinely felt like for the most part. There were, these bigger narrative stories, but there are a lot of times where it's just 20 minutes of, all right, here's our Star Wars mission of the week, and there you go. And I think that Star Wars could really benefit from looking at that model of episodic storytelling and adopting that, and you can have an overarching narrative within episodic storytelling. But I think that Star Wars is is uniquely suited to do this more so than most of the other franchises out there, just because of how vast the galaxy is and how you can, build from something that's small. Like the Bad Batch feels small when it starts, like you just have a group of rogue clones that are doing their own thing, and then it turns into this giant story about how they're essentially defying the Emperor and the one project that he is most invested in. But you don't really, they don't really know that necessarily, but we know that. And so I love the fact that you can have just episodic storytelling that can feel a lot bigger than it is. And I think that's something Star Wars should look at more, versus trying to make everything one larger cohesive narrative that tells a big thing. Like I thought the Acolytes could have really benefited from that. Like this is, if instead of trying to convince us that this is some sort of giant mystery or something like that, simply tell the story of, some dark side figures, the Sith, that are rising through, and each week maybe something different is happening because of them. And we know the overarching narrative of this is leading to Darth Sidious Order 66. But instead of trying to like wrap us into one, tightly knit story that doesn't necessarily know what it's supposed to be all the time, I think sometimes Star Wars might take itself a little too seriously in some of these shows, when it could really benefit from being something that each week kind of stands on its own legs, so to speak. Because that's what I love about Mando, is I can go watch season 2 episode of one of Mando, and I don't really need to know anything else going on in the Mandalorian universe, and I can just have fun with that episode, and I can go back and rewatch that episode. Not a lot of the episodes of some of the other Star Wars projects we have are rewatchable just on their own merit, and I think that's something that honestly is a little bit lost with when it comes to Star Wars. Like Star Wars should be something where if that episode is like something I'm wanting to watch, I can just watch that episode.
So, first of all, I understand that you feel that way. I don't necessarily. That's not necessarily the type of storytelling I enjoy the most.
Right.
And I would say that if I were Disney and I were judging how other services are performing, I would lean the way that they're going right now.
Probably.
At the same time, to your point, The Mandalorian, which follows that model, at least for the first 2 seasons, is still the most watched series on Disney Plus, precisely because of that, precisely because you don't know what you're gonna watch tonight, but you know that if you put on an episode of Mandalorian, you're first of all you're gonna have fun, and second of all, you're not gonna feel like you need to remember something from that you watched from 2 years ago because you jumped into season 2, episode 3. You know that maybe the remembering what happened before at the beginning is enough for you to put yourself in the right mindset, and that's not happening with Obi-Wan. That's not happening
Right.
with Boba Fett. Nobody's watching those shows anymore precisely because of that. So I do think that's something they need to consider, and even though I don't necessarily enjoy that as much as some of these other these other type of storytelling, and that's not to say that that works usually best for the
Right.
most part, because it hasn't. Like I will say that aside from Andor, I don't think I've really enjoyed any of the Star Wars series that has come out so far. Because I thought Ahsoka was mid, like it was okay at best. I thought Obi-Wan was also okay at best.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I felt like you
Yeah.
really enjoyed Ahsoka, but it was more as the series went on that it kind of dissipated for you. Like I think you really, I thought I remember, if I remember correctly, you were a big fan of early on. Like you thought, oh, this is the Star Wars I'm missing. This is the Star Wars I've really wanted. And then as the show kind of they stretched it a little too thin, you felt, at least in the last episode. Is that
That's
correct?
precisely the term that we use. It was stretched too thin because, I mean, and then I have like some nitpicks, mostly because of you're visiting some other galaxy, which who knows what could happen here. It feels like a bourbon plot. It feels like super contained and super unoriginal. That was a huge letdown for me, but. My biggest takeaway from Ahsoka was that it was stretched too thin. It was a story that could have been 3 episodes. We have to rescue Ezra. He's here. We go there. We can bring him back, and that was like a story for a 3-arc story for 3 episodes, and they stretched it into 8 just because they felt like it.
Hmm.
or rather, Dave
The
felt like
mhm.
it.
Well, I do understand a lot of people don't love the episodic storytelling, but I think, like I said, like Mando season 1 and 2, I think kind of gives you the best of both worlds, where you know that there's this overarching thing with the Empire needing Grogu, but episode 4 of The Mandalorian, it doesn't have anything to do with that till the very end. It kind of has a bounty hunter looking for him, and
Yeah,
those are the kind of things that I really
no,
want
but I
more
am
of,
agreeing
for
with you.
sure.
I'm just saying, I'm agreeing with you despite this not being
Mhm.
exactly what I would expect from a Star Wars series. I'm
Right.
agreeing with you in that this is the thing that Star Wars needs to capture some people's imaginations again. That
Mhm.
this we're stalling right now. We're running in circles basically.
Mhm.
We're I don't know. Do you have anything else on TV that you wanna discuss?
One more
Okay.
thing. Let's do like a quick, just one sentence here. Tales of the Empire. Should they have done Tales of the Jedi season 2 instead, or do you feel like Tales of the Empire, doesn't matter which one they have done, it would have came and went as it did?
No, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the format. I appreciated the change of pace.
Okay.
But I would welcome a second season of Tales of the Jedi sometime, but I think this was good. I think that this is what we needed at the time. Whether it was
Hmm.
good enough to uh, stick, I don't think it was necessarily better or worse than Tales of the Jedi. I think it like as I look back on Tales of the Jedi, I don't think I think of it differently than Tales of the Empire, if that makes sense.
And the Acolyte. Are you still exhausted from the Acolyte discourse, or have you finally recovered?
I'm still exhausted. I haven't really rewatched the series. I look forward to doing that one day, but
Mhm.
I think that my general consensus will prevail that this was a messy story, that this was not handled very well, and I think that the show became what it was meant to be from the beginning, right at the
Mhm.
very end, when it was too late.
Mhm. I would agree. I would agree. I get sad when I think about the Acolyte, because
Yeah,
I think about how
the
the
loss of
end of the
potential.
show felt like it found where it was supposed to be,
Yeah,
and it took a long time to get there. But even with that, it felt like both sides of the spectrum, like just the negativity. And I just hate the fact you have people like Lee Jong Jae promoting Squid Game season 2, having to address how painful it was to have the backlash for Star Wars, and then you have like Amanda Stenberg having to talk about it. I just hate the fact that those are part of the Star Wars conversation, and that people can't control themselves and not be losers. But then on the other hand, I don't appreciate when there are episodes of a show that clearly aren't, don't meet the standard of what Star Wars should be or what we
yeah,
expect, but it's like they use their platforms to basically say this is perfect, this is amazing, and if you don't love this, then you hate this. And I wish we could get back to a little some normalcy here with Star Wars, and I think that Skeleton Crew will serve as a bit of a palate cleanser. I get sad thinking about how much of a Last Jedi of Disney Plus that the Acolyte became in terms of the discourse, and we'll see if Star Wars can uh, generate some more positivity and in general goodwill over 2025. But all right, that was the year of Disney Plus, and shout outs to Michael Olson and Young Jedi Adventure Season 2. I love you dearly. Let's get into all the things from the movie
Okay, but
slate. I'm just yeah,
before
yes.
you like segue, let me do a quick segue, like that I will pull directly from my piece that
Okay.
I will just stole directly from me from earlier today when I wrote it, and I wanna play a little game with you. Okay,
Okay.
this is my point. Yeah, a lot of people talked about the acolyte. Okay, at least online. But how many
Right.
people actually talked on the street, like as they were hanging out with people about the acolyte? How many people talked about Skeleton Crew over the past couple weeks? Like
Hmm.
I don't feel like these shows, as I was saying earlier, have had the same cultural impact as a
Hmm.
theatrical movie has did, like
Hmm.
5 years ago when Rise
Hmm.
of Skywalker came out.
Mhm.
I don't think that the discourse on Last Jedi was nearly at the same level as it was the Acolyte. That was
No,
much heavier, much not heavy in terms of much more brutal. In terms of a lot more
definitely.
people were talking about it.
Mhm.
Okay, and this is my point. Do you know what were the five highest grossing movies of the year 2024 worldwide?
Inside Out 2,
Yeah,
um, Deadpool Wolverine,
yeah,
Doom 2.
yeah,
They're all sequels, right? Like they're all sequels.
yeah. But no, I'm not going there.
Okay, okay. I'm like just talking through. Like they're all sequels,
Yeah,
right? Now I'm like trying to remember what came out
yeah,
this
yeah.
year.
I'll tell you the other two.
Minions,
Yeah, that was the fourth, and the
Minions,
fifth one was Moana.
Moana. Okay,
Okay,
Moana. Okay, Moana 2. Yeah, it's obviously
okay.
going crazy.
All of these movies you have heard of. All of these movies you were banged with marketing for months, probably, and all of these movies are recognizable. Do you know what were the five most watched movies on Netflix, like original movies on Netflix in the first half of 2024?
I couldn't tell you a single one.
Okay, I'm gonna read you the list, okay? And tell me if you recognize any of these names.
Okay.
First was called Damsel. Do you know what
Nope.
Damsel is? It's this
Ryan
Millie Bobby
Reynolds.
Brown movie that came out in March. Second one was Lift. Do you know what Lift is?
I've heard of Lyft. I know
Okay,
I've
it
heard
was
of
like
it.
this movie that came out in the first week of January with Kevin Hart, I think it was.
Yeah.
Third is Society of the Snow, which I bet that you know. It was the Bayona movie
Mhm.
from like the plane that was lost in Chile and all that.
Yeah.
Fourth, Under Paris. Do you know what Under Paris is?
No.
Okay, me neither. Fifth, Mother of the Bride. Do you know what Mother of the Bride is?
Never heard of it.
Okay, my point. Streaming does not have cultural impact.
Mhm.
Movies do. Theatrical movies do. And I can make it the same point on series. Do you know what the five most watched series in the first half of 2024 on Netflix were? I will tell you. First, it was called Fool Me Once. Do you know what Fool Me Once is?
No.
Okay, me neither. Bridgerton season 3. I bet that you know that one. Baby Reindeer. Do you know what that is?
It's a Christmas show.
No, I mean that did generate some buzz, but I don't think it was on the same level as Deadpool and Wolverine. Fourth, The Gentleman. Do you know what The Gentleman is?
Nope.
Okay, it was this Netflix uh, kind of adaptation of a Guy Ritchie movie that he also like produced and all that. And fifth was the live action adaptation of Airbender, The Last
Mhm.
Airbender.
Okay. I
None
don't
of
have
this I
Netflix,
feel,
and because I don't feel like I am excited about anything on the platform.
but it's not about what you watch. It's about the conversations or the
What you yeah.
yeah, like you're going on the street and you're hearing about these things. You go on TikTok and you see memes about this. Like
Mhm.
this I don't think streaming has this impact.
Mhm.
And I think that the movies that you and I are gonna discuss now will have some of
Mhm.
this impact. So
Right.
with that, you take it away.
No, that's all that's perfect because I agree that when it comes to the impact, the movies are where it is for sure. And this is everything we got this year in Star Wars movies. Hold on to your seats because this is an interesting list. So, beginning of the year, we learned that Mando and Grogu were getting their own movie, and below behold, this is the only Star Wars project in terms of feature films that has had a very clear start and end point in terms of production, getting something done, and having a clear release date since Rise of Skywalker came out 5 years ago. So, Mando and Grogu, it finished production or some finished filming this year, and that movie is going to be good to go. They're going to be sitting on that for a minute till May of 2026, but we are expecting a trailer for that in 2025 at Star Wars Celebration. If you go on YouTube or your phone, I'm sure you can find a little clip somewhere from the one they released at D23. I've watched it a few times. The Ray movie had a new has lost Stephen Knight as its writer. A new writer is going to be announced at some point, and yes, I just put issues because it's having issues. Like Tell me if you've heard that before. We also had Simon Kingberg announced to be writing and producing a new Star Wars trilogy that happened just over a month ago for the Miguel quote unquote November surprise that Star Wars always delivers for us. And Sean Levy question mark, because supposedly Star Wars is like his next thing. We don't really know exactly what's going on there, other than the rumors are that there's a battle for Rey going on at Disney, and that Sean Levy has something Rey in the works. Believe it or not, Rogue Squadron was talked about this year, as Patty Jenkins said that she is still supposed to be giving a draft or something to Disney and to Lucasfilm for Rogue Squadron. But other things, right, as of later, saying that they're still going forward with Rogue Squadron without Patty Jenkins. So again, who knows what Rogue Squadron is going to be. I put Mangold's Dawn of the Jedi because we aren't really sure when that could come out, what that looks like. But in terms of Star Wars movies right now, maybe no news is good news when it comes to the Mangold movie. And then, of course, Donald Glover actually mentioned Lando this year and went out of his way to mention it. I don't really agree with some of the things he said about Star Wars needs to just have fun sometimes, because I think Star Wars has a lot of fun. But you know what? I kind of understand his point, though. And him actually mentioning Lando, you know what? I'll take it. And then Filoni said he pretty much has a direction for his movie. Of course, a lot of that will depend on what happens in Ahsoka season 2, which starts filming next year. And then I'm sure this will get ramped up towards the end of next year, probably. But Miguel, it seems like we have so much happening in the Star Wars movies scene this year, while also nothing happening in the Star Wars movie, which it kind of feels that way. But in reality, there was an entire Star Wars movie filmed in 2024. Like an entire movie was filmed in 24, but it doesn't feel like it at all at the same time, because it doesn't even come out till 26. But we don't know anything going on there other than Sigourney Weaver is going to be in this movie. It's going to be whatever in May 26th. We don't know anything. So how do you feel? Like, I could see a lot of reasons to be very concerned and frustrated at the end of this year, but at the same time, if someone told me they feel really good because we finally have a year where a Star Wars movie was filmed and we know when it's coming out, I could understand that sentiment as well, even if that movie that's been filmed and is in question almost feels like we have to do something, so we're gonna force this whole thing upon it. But it still happens. So where are you as we round up the year in Star Wars
I think
movies?
that you described it perfectly, because it was a very weird situation, because they've been trying to get a movie up and running after the Rise of Skywalker for literally, like, since when? Maybe 2017,
Right.
they announced the Ryan Johnson trilogy. I think the Benioff and Weiss movie came out, like, was announced the year after. So since 2017, they've been trying to get a movie up and running to be released after December 2019, and it had to be Jon Favreau, who was doing TV, who had to say, "Hold my beer, I'm gonna do it," and he actually did it. Like, that is crazy to think about, and not a good look for Lucasfilm. Like, whatever you want to say, this is not a good look for Lucasfilm. And however you want to spin it, I think most people would spin it as this being mismanagement of the franchise, but there will still be some people who will feel optimistic. I do not feel like this is an optimistic look for the company, because it had to be Jon Favreau who actually did it. At the same time, so aside from that, I do like I will always feel optimistic about Star Wars on the big screen. I will defend the fact that Mangold is working on a draft with Bo Willimon, who is an amazing screenwriter, as we saw in Andor. They are finishing a draft, and they will probably, like, make a big push for the movie next year, because A Complete Unknown is now out in theaters. I think that's gonna get an Oscar push, but I don't think it's gonna get a ton of nominations. So after the nominations are announced in January, I think Mangold is gonna focus solely on Star Wars. So that's good news for us. The Sean Levy movie has a writer, and has
Mhm.
not had a lot of. I would actually flip your argument that no news is good news here, because we haven't really received any news on that, but I think that's moving steadily
Mhm.
in the right direction. Even though I'm not necessarily as excited for that one as I am for Mangolds.
When
But
it comes to Sean Levy, I will say
yeah,
this: I Mangold's movie is the one that appeals the most to me
yeah,
of those two by far, just because of like you said, the screenwriter that is attached, phenomenal. Mangold, say what you want about some of his, the more recent movies that he has put out there, but he knows what he's doing. You look at his IMDb, you see the track record. There are plenty of bangers in there, and you feel comfortably like you have a professional that has been through the fire in terms of filmmaking and directing, that I feel like that movie is going to be exciting. But say for this Sean Levy, is he has at least, and Star Wars could use this, a lot of goodwill after Deadpool and Wolverine, which wasn't my cup of tea. It wasn't the movie that I loved, but I am by far like in the minority on that in terms of the general population. So if they were to make a big push in 25 for Sean Levy's idea, Sean Levy's story, and he were to come out talking about it, I do think that's something that Lucasfilm can spin really positively very quickly because of all of the goodwill that he did, build up at least with in 24.
yeah, I think you're right about that. There's also like some recent precedent with Deadpool and Wolverine. He was attached to that movie in February 2022. That was when it was announced. That movie came out less than 2.5 years after that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Uh, so I'm assuming he was already working on it before that, but it still is like a 2.5 year turnaround. And it's less than that because Hugh Jackman didn't like get attached until the summer, so it was
Mm-hmm.
like pretty much a 2 year with a strike in the meantime. So it
Mm-hmm.
was like less than that. So I think that speaks highly of how he can turn a movie around. Uh, at a
Mm-hmm.
fast pace and actually deliver at the box office and uh, have a lot of buzz around it. I didn't enjoy it very much either,
Mm-hmm.
but I think I would rather have a movie that I don't enjoy but that people talk about and that generates goodwill rather than not have than what we have now, which is headline after headline of another project falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, I wouldn't put it past him to be in Japan saying my movie is coming out in 2027, and here is what's happening with it. As of the Ray question, I think now we get into the territory of we have to coordinate between all the Ray projects and everything that is happening with that. And if Sean Levy's movie is actually about Ray, there's also the thing to consider about Charmin's movie, which is also about
Mm-hmm.
Ray, and it was also announced to be about Ray before before that. So there's a lot to unpack there, and I don't necessarily want to read too much into it because I think that we're missing the big picture here,
Mm-hmm.
and doesn't really benefit us to speculate on whatever scenario because we're
Right.
probably gonna be wrong. But yeah, enough. I've spoken to for way too long. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts overall?
So I have been exceedingly frustrated this year with Star Wars movies, and that is because that the longer I am a big believer in Rey the character. It is one of my favorite characters of the sequel area. It's probably my favorite character. I have wanted to see more of this character moving forward. Do I think that, the future of Star Wars films should solely be, centered around Rey? No, but I think it's a logical next step for the franchise to see what this character can do in a new, completely blank slate. And the more time that goes on with these delays, with these issues, with being unable to get a writer down, it just gives more fuel to the fire to many of the Star Wars detractors and many of the Star Wars sequel detractors that exist, especially centered around Rey's character. Like, see, you can't figure out this character. There's just a lot of negativity, and the longer you keep letting that bubble is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger, and I worry about that a little bit. But I'll be honest. I exit 24 and I'm a little bit leaning towards the optimistic side, even though it felt like the entire year was a negative, simply because yes, it took John Favreau having to come in and do this, but I at least know, like, there is no doubt in my mind that that movie is coming out in 26. And I haven't been able to feel that way about a Star Wars movie since Rise of Skywalker came out, where I know this movie is coming out. I can pencil that in for that day, that year, and I know that it's going to happen, and I feel really excited about that. And I think I'm projecting, and that's a terrible thing to do when it comes to Lucasfilm, but I'm projecting that they're going to figure out what to do this next year because it feels like you have too many professionals involved, like too many adults in the room for there not to be another movie that gets put together and finalized in 25. Like you have with Mangold, you have Levy there. I think there's, Simon Kingberg is signed on to write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy. I don't think that's going to be the next thing that comes out from
No,
Lucasfilm.
no,
I
it's
don't
not.
think there's any way that happens. But again, another person that has experience with Lucasfilm that's now in the picture that knows how to get these projects up and going. I feel like now I have a clearer picture that there is at least a track record here of what we're going to be doing, and I am excited because I know Dave Filoni's movie is going to happen because by golly, he's going to make sure that his movie does happen. He's in this new role. He's going to make sure that his one shot is gonna count. So I at least feel decent about that moving forward. But that doesn't necessarily negate the fact that this year kind of felt like a slog and an uphill battle the entire time. So if we're projecting, I might feel a little bit better. If I'm looking back on this year, it kind of sucked. If I'm just looking back at how I felt throughout the year, because
I would agree. Yeah, yeah, because there's like this one shining light that was Mountain Grogu that is like, blinding us from everything else,
and
basically.
how long has Mando and Grogu been the one shining light now? About 5 years that those two characters, at
Oh yeah,
least,
in
not
that
just
way,
the
yeah,
movie.
yeah, yeah.
It's
I
been
mean,
like those
it's
two. How
very
long
ironic.
can those two characters be your one shining light
Yeah,
before it goes away too much?
it's absolutely ironic, and I think it even speaks, even though it speaks well of the fact that Lucasfilm was able to get this movie up and running. It's at the same time, it's not a good look that they had to use these two characters and they had to use John Favreau to actually do it.
Hmm. Hmm.
At the
I
same
agree.
time, I was feeling very optimistic about 2024 when 2023 ended for Star Wars movies,
Hmm.
and I don't feel that way now,
Hmm.
despite Mando and Grogu. And I think because of that bottom line, this was not a good year
Hmm.
in that regard.
Like
I think that
this was not supposed to be the year of Mando and Grogu
it was
being the
not. It
movie.
was
It wasn't
supposed
supposed to
to be
be.
the year of Rey. We were
Hmm.
supposed to have by now a picture of Daisy Ridley in costume on the set saying,
Hmm.
"We are filming this movie now and it's gonna come
Hmm.
out on this day."
Hmm.
And it's not a good look that they didn't have that ready. I would
Hmm.
also say, speaking of PR and all that, why wasn't Mando and Grogu more publicized? Why didn't we have there's no reason that we didn't have an actual official picture from the set
Hmm.
released. Like there's no reason that they couldn't announce this movie's filming now. That when JJ was filming, he like released a photo of the camera. Like we don't need more than that. We
Hmm.
like who cares that I mean, I guess they want to like avoid leakers, taking pictures from outside the lot or whatever. But I think you can still manage.
Hmm.
You can still be proud that you got a movie up and running
Hmm.
all these years later. Like, and this bugs me a little. But yeah, the fact that the Ray movie, it's probably not gonna be the next one after this. It's probably gonna be I would still say Mangolds,
Hmm.
but uh,
How many
keep an eye
people
out for Sean Levy.
we've talked about this word on the street? How many people even know that there is a Star Wars movie, Mandalorian and Grogu, that is actually done filming and is coming out in May of 26. I feel like
Yeah,
I feel like there's probably a lot of people that have no earthly idea there's a new Star Wars movie lined up, ready to
no,
go. It's
that's
already
true,
been
but
shot.
it's still way too early. I don't think they need
Mhm.
it. I don't think they need the buzz yet.
Okay,
They
so
really want.
that's why I asked then, how much it bugged you there wasn't pictures from the set or anything like that because
Well,
it's so far away. Do you think that that was their idea, was let's not even put out much right now of anything because we have such bad track record? Is that, do you think that was maybe a conversation, is we've struggled, we don't want to put anything out, so let's just wait till we know we have something actually put together and done, and
I
then
mean,
celebration will boom, hard launch.
the moment that you're on the set, the moment that you have a trailer ready for D23, like why not put out a picture?
Mhm.
Like I don't know. I don't
Right.
know what
But they
they
won't even release
do.
that trailer to the public.
No, but we've gone over this. I agree with their decision on that.
Yeah.
I don't think
Okay.
that they need to release that. I think that with VFX, they aren't finished. They
Mhm.
if they release it now, it's gonna be picked apart on how the CGI looks for another year, and they don't need that bad press. And
Okay.
that happens because that
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
happened to a dozen trailers this year. That
Happens happens to movies after they're
Mhm.
released.
Yeah, I
People
mean that
slow,
as well. But
people slow down, they pick apart everything. Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I was just curious what you thought about that. That's fine.
no, I don't know the reasoning behind it. I'm just saying I was a bit disappointed that it didn't happen
Mhm.
this way. At least be proud that you actually did it, because the moment that you're on set, it's
Mhm.
like you're actually doing it. It's not that
Mhm.
you can. I wouldn't say that you have to post a picture of Dave Filoni writing Ahsoka season 2, but
Right.
whenever he actually starts filming, like they did the same thing with Ahsoka season 1. When they
Mhm.
started filming, they released a picture of Filoni's
There's the
chair
Filoni's
with
hats
the
with the
hat.
chair. Yeah, I remember. I
Like,
got super excited when I saw it.
yeah, what's the hurt? Like, what's the
Mhm.
damage that that picture can do?
Mhm.
It's nothing. And the same with wrapping the movie. Like, who cares when you wrap?
Mhm.
Like, even more, you should be proud that you wrapped the movie
Mhm.
after 6 years without a movie in
Mhm.
production. Well, five and a half. Sorry.
So rapid fire, and then we'll get out of here for the end of
Yeah,
the year. Let's say Donald Glover mentioning Lando. Was
never
this
happening.
a not happening?
No,
Okay, I was gonna say good year or bad year for for the Lando
doesn't
stands.
matter. Never happening.
Doesn't matter. Rogue Squadron.
I will eat my
Anything to
foot.
take away from this year?
I will eat my foot if this movie comes out.
Gosh, I get the live stream cameras ready, guys, for
Yeah.
the epic Rogue Squadron movie. And then did this? How much were you surprised with the Simon Kingberg to write and produce new Star Wars trilogy announcement? And should I even care going as we exit the year?
Surprised? I was shocked. I was. This was the biggest shock to me in Star Wars this year. I was blown away. Uh, Not because it was a good announcement, not because it was a bad announcement, because it was so out of left field. Like, I wasn't expecting this at all. Um, and the chances of this happening, I would say less than a coin toss.
Okay.
So like 40 to 45% that this actually happens,
Mhm.
which is still high, by the way.
It's mhm. But this is it's the times that we live in. The times that we live in.
Yeah,
So, Miguel, we made it through. Thank you for hopping on. Always a good time to chat Star Wars with you. We haven't been able to do this in a while. The schedules have been crazy. Into
yeah.
the semester of school, wrapping up grad school for me. I haven't feel like I've only talked about Star Wars like one time the last 3 weeks, which for most people that's like okay, that's a normal lifestyle, but for me that feels like I'm having withdrawals. So this was fun. I really appreciate it. Everyone is been quite the year in Star Wars. This was part one, so I'm gonna be dropping this soon. Hopefully, whenever you listen to it, you guys enjoy it. Hit that like and subscribe button so we can keep the podcast rolling on into 2025. I'll be recording tomorrow tomorrow morning at like 9 a.m. Nate, Luke, and I are doing a Christmas Eve recording of publishing year in review for Star Wars. For those of you who love your Star Wars books and comics, we might let Nate do a brief video game monologue as well, because I think Nate and Luke both played the Star Wars video games as well, and I haven't played any Star Wars video games this year, but I'll let them kind of have a segment on that as well. So we'll drop that the next week. And then if those of you who follow regularly, Paul and I will be having good friend Paul back, and we're going to do a Star Wars 2025 look ahead. What does Star Wars need to do in the year 2025? Keep following us around. Do what?
Shoot another movie.
Do not get me started. Like I will have my rant ready to go. Absolutely. Keep enjoying Skeleton Crew. Join us on Thursdays for Star Wars Newsnet Live. I probably won't be able to be on again this week, but after that, I promise I will not miss a Thursday for the rest of my life. There we go. Miguel, thank you as always. It's been a good time, everybody. And because I haven't been on for the last little bit, remember, everybody, for light and life, remember, we're all the Republic.